Hey, I'm Skybrat with DNB Academy. If you want the presets from this video and other exclusive content, check out DNB Academy monthly at dnbacademy.com. You can also sign up to our free access plan to get started for free. I'm going to show you how to make leads and basses like in the track Danger from T Sugah. So this is the original one. And this is my recreation. You can make these leads and basses often with multiple layers. The first layer here is a top layer that has the harmonics on top of the bass, also the movement in the sound, and also the high end and the stereo. The next layer is a layer that adds a bit of weight to the sound and sounds like this. You can also hear a bit of stereo panning going around that is created by the unison here and is caused by the phasing. To end, there's also a sub-layer, and that one has also a bit of mid-bass in it, and it sounds like this. This one has no LFOing going on, so you can hear it's just a sustained sound. Here are the notes if you want to copy them for the melody. This is for the top layers. And here are the notes for the bass layer. You can see that these are not the same notes because they are creating a harmony with the other ones. If you layer them on top of each other, you can see the harmony here. A perfect fifth, a major third, a perfect fifth again, and a perfect fourth, and a perfect fourth again. Okay, let's start with the first layer. That's the top layer. We'll use as oscillator A and oscillator B for this one. And for oscillator A, we will take the analog wavetable and then matrix C64. This is a wavetable with a lot of harmonics, so we can really dial it in as we want. We'll take something from position 52. Then for oscillator B, we'll use a spectral wavetable, something like ReZMS 3, because we are going to use this one to FM onto the other one. And if you use a spectral wavetable to FM, you can get some really nice vibrations out of it. So turn down the level of oscillator B. This one goes 1 octave down and 7 semitones down. And this one 2 octaves up. And we'll enable FM from B and put it somewhere around 32%. Next, we'll enable the filter. We'll use a comp filter only for oscillator A. The cutoff goes down to around 45 Hz. And we'll also turn down the mix value somewhere over here. And now we're going to use LFO1 to create a bit of movement. That is the fade in you can hear like in the original track. Something like this. We'll also create a shape. This is like creating the fade in, and then also a bit of the, at the end where it turns down. We'll enable envelope mode, BPM off, put it on 3.7 Hz. We'll also use the same LFO for the level here. Turn the level down a bit and let it go all the way up. And if you want to increase a bit of the gnarliness of the sound, a bit of the vibrations, you can use Band Plus. And we can also modulate this one. Turn down the volume as well. It's now really sounding quite mono. If we want to increase the width, we can use unison on 2, detune all the way down, random all the way down, detune on 16 for oscillator B, detune here a bit higher than the default mode, and random all the way down. If you use this setting with random all the way down, it creates a lot of phasing. But if you use it on a layer that has you're going to use FM onto another one, it can create some interesting movement. And also if you use detune all the way down and random all the way down on an oscillator, it still keeps a strong presence in the mid. Maybe it's sounding a bit too wide, so we can go over to the global tab and decrease the width. If we want to, we can even modulate it so it opens up. We'll then head over to the FX section. Here we'll use the compressor and put it into multiband mode. Increase the threshold a bit. The ratio will be decreased, something like this. increase the attack. The release is fine, and the gain can be also increased a bit, so we'll have to turn down the volume here. Then we'll also use an EQ. We are going to use an EQ to boost certain frequencies modulated by an LFO into a distortion to create a bit of like the harshness or the distortion effect you can hear in the original lead. So we'll use the same LFO, put it on both gains, and put it in unipolar mode by using Shift-Alt and clicking on them. We'll turn it down a bit so that it doesn't go too crazy. We'll use the bell curves on both, increase the frequency on this one and on the other one as well, something like this. And we'll decrease the Q factor here and the Q on this one as well. Decrease the volume again a bit. And then we'll use a distortion. In this case, we'll put the distortion after the EQ and take the sine fault. Sine fault is something that creates a lot of noise. So if you're like going crazy with it, your whole lead will sound really bad. But it can also be really helpful to give like a bit of extra texture to your sounds. You can hear like in the original sound that there's some noise there, but you can also bake it into the lead or the bass itself by using some technique like this one. In this case, we'll also modulate the drive a bit to give an extra bit of movement. Because a lot of times if you use distortion, your movement will be a bit lost. And we'll also decrease the mix to just dial it in by taste. And to end, we can also again use a bit of hyper dimension to make it like a bit more spacey, roomy. And also this will create a bit of phasing again to make it a bit more interesting in the stereo field as well. You can hear that also in the original lead. So something like unison 7 with mix around 14% and here also like 12%. Let's create a layer that gives a bit extra weight to the lead. We'll also do a similar approach. Both oscillators. We'll take an analog and then basic shapes and choose a sine wave. For this one, we'll use a spectral one, Monster 3. We'll turn down the level because we're again going to use FM from B. Turn up the level somewhere around 37. The randoms of both oscillators, turn them down. This one goes 1 octave down and 7 semitones down. And then we'll also enable the filter again, but this time we're not going to use a filter as filtering or like EQing, but only to do some modulation of the drive for the volume and a bit of distortion. So we'll turn down the mix, and turn on oscillator B as well into the filter, and we'll take LFO1 onto the drive, something like this. We'll also do LFO1 onto the level again, turn it all the way up, and we'll draw the same shape as we did before. BPM off, 3.7, and on envelope mode, and it should sound something like this. If you want to increase the gnarliness or like the vibration, like we also did a bit in the other layer, we can also use Band Plus again, and here it will make a bigger difference. You can really hear how it makes it sound really like wet or like very gnarly sounding. Then we can also do a bit of unison here, so the distortion goes into the stereo field. We can also turn down detune, but not all the way down, but something like 0.03. And in terms of FX, there's nothing here, so we can just leave it as it is. For the last layer, we're going to create a sub and also a mid bass. So we'll turn on the sub oscillator, put it on -1 octave, turn the level all the way up, only use one oscillator here. We'll again use a spectral wavetable, something like Resi Mes 4. We can turn down the random again. We can also use a bit of bend. Something like this should be fine. and there's no LFOing going on because this is a sustained layer. The only thing we still have to do is turn down the octave with -1, and we can also dial in the wavetable position as we like. As you can hear, there's like way too much high now, and it will conflict with the top layer. So we'll go over to the FX section. We'll use a compressor again, put it on multiband mode, turn down the threshold a bit, turn down the ratio, turn up the attack, release is fine, turn up the gain, turn down the master volume, and then we'll use an EQ to reduce the highs as well as reduce a bit of the mid area, because otherwise it will clash too much with the other layers. So we'll use a low pass filter here, and a bell curve is fine. So we'll reduce the gain, reduce the Q factor, and turn it up somewhere up to 800 Hertz. And at this side we'll reduce the frequency a bit, somewhere around 1K, and we'll increase the Q a bit, and also the gain. And it should sound like this. So we'll still have to do some post-processing as well. I used the Pro Q3 to remove certain harmonics, for example here. And I also boosted the highs a bit. And that's on the first layer, on the top layer. And then I also added another EQ, scooped out the mids, removed the low end so it doesn't collide with the sub layer. And I also used a bit of distortion from thermal in this case. It can be any distortion, but I found like these preset and it sounded really nice. Then for the other layer that gives a bit more weight, I also did a bit of EQing. I removed a fairly amount of the low end, and then also rolled off the high end. And it goes into the same processing with the thermal distortion. And then for the bass layer, I also have some soothe on it. It's actually just to tame the harshness. And there's also an EQ where I did fairly amount of boosting of the sub, also of the low mids, scooped again the mids here, and did a roll off of the high end. It is really everything just by listening and seeing how it fits together. So this is how everything together sounds. You can hear the sub is really present because we boosted the low layer to hear it better, so we'll just reduce it a bit. We can also dial it in back while mixing. Then everything goes together into a bus. I also did some post-processing. I boosted the sub here, reduced the low mids, increase the presence in the mids, and then tame the highs a bit. This is all just done by listening and by while doing the mix. The next one is a micro shift. It creates, it's actually a chorus, but it creates a really nice movement in the stereo field as well. Just don't push it too much and use it like in a subtle way. Then OTT ties everything together. I dialed it in like around 57%, and it makes a big difference. Then I have a Saturn. It's actually doing a lot on the highs, and if you have like a bit of harshness in your high end and you want to get a bit more smooth high end, you can use Saturn to push it into warm tape. It works really well. And I also did a subtle like warm tube on the low end to give a bit more harmonics on the sub, a bit of warm tape as well on the mid. But the problem is if you do it too much, like especially on the mid area, it can quickly like crush your whole mix, and if your sound is really present, it can really reduce to the background. So that's also something to keep in mind and be a bit careful. Then the next one is a decapitator. It can be any distortion, but I'm just using a bit of drive here to give it a bit more saturation at the end. And then also a soothe. That's reducing the harshness again, the same as we did on the bass. Altogether it sounds like this. The bass is a bit too pushed, so we'll reduce that one. And then the weight layer is also a bit too present, so we'll reduce that as well. This is something you have to just keep on doing to get it right. You can really tweak all the stuff I showed you here today and get really close to the original sound. So yeah, that's how you make these kinds of basses and leads with these typical vibration. You can experiment with it, try some other stuff, other wavetables as well, like similar techniques, and you can get really interesting and nice sounds out of it. If you want the presets from this video and other exclusive content, check out DNB Academy monthly at dnbacademy.com. You can also sign up to our free access plan to get started for free.